The expression of time is today widely believed to be one of the unique features of traditional Japanese architecture. This paper argues that many of the apparently temporal features that have been identified in traditional Japanese buildings, however, were in fact accommodations of change rather than conscious expressions of time per se, and similar characteristics are also to be found in traditional buildings from other cultures. It is suggested that the interpretation of traditional Japanese architecture as having been based on time rather than space was part of a long-standing impulse, both within and beyond Japan, to cast Japanese culture in direct contrast to the West. Temporary places in Japanese cities, a traditional street festival, a cherry blossom gathering, and an impromptu contemporary street performance. Similar are temporary places in other cultures. Use of spatial terms to express temporal ideas in the Japanese language. Use of spatial terms to express temporal ideas in other languages. Lack of a concept of space as a positive entity in the design of traditional Japanese buildings. Lack of space as a positive entity in the design of buildings of ordinary late 19th century Western buildings. The aesthetic appreciation of age in Japanese architecture. The aesthetic appreciation of age in European art and architecture. Accommodation of change in traditional Southeast Asian and Japanese dwellings. Movable straw mats in a traditional Malay longhouse and a 19th century Japanese farmhouse. Accommodation of change in traditional Japanese buildings. Adjustable wall planes in the Japanese Sukiya-style dwelling. Sliding shoji, rollable sunshades, sliding rain doors, and sliding fusuma. Accommodation of change in the traditional buildings of other cultures. Examples of adjustable wall planes in traditional non-Japanese dwellings. Celebration of religious events in the traditional Japanese dwelling. Spaces marking events in the traditional Japanese dwelling, a tokonoma at New Year, a domestic Shinto kamidana, and a Buddhist butsudan. Celebration of religious events in the traditional dwellings of other cultures. Implications. There are strong indications that traditional Japanese buildings were not consciously designed to express time per se. There was no concept of time as a positive abstract entity in Japan prior to the 1850s. The use of spatial terms to express temporal ideas was not unique to Japan. Discussion of the expression of time in traditional Japanese buildings only began in the 1960s, and the publication most associated in the West with Japanese-built expressions of time, Metabolism 1960, never actually used the term. It might be more accurate to say that the accommodation of change is a characteristic of traditional Japanese architecture, but that this was also true of traditional buildings in many other cultures too.